How are you?
Doing fantastic today. Thanks for having me.
Is it Andria or Andria?
No, thanks for asking. It's actually just like Alexandria, the city that I live closest to out here. My mom just decided that I needed to be unique and put an I on it. So yeah, Andrea, you had it right.
Love it. That's great. Well, welcome. We're so pleased to have you. Congratulations on all the things that are happening in your world.
Thanks. Yeah, we are at George Mason. I'm at George Mason Mortgage right now, but I would say the last 2 years as both a company and then personally, professionally, has just been a kind of a wild ride, especially since I'm kind of your under 40 crew here representing on the show.
Yay!
We love that.
A little bit more about yourself and where you're from and how you got into doing what you're doing.
Yeah, actually, I'm originally here from the East Coast. My parents moved out here, grew up with all sisters, and so was really fortunate to be the youngest of 4 girls. And after getting married, having my kids young, spending some time, stay-at-home mom, even had that in my early life, really got kind of hooked into a great mentor. Kathleen Murphy-Zempel is the president, or was the president, of Westar Mortgage. And so that was my first job out of school, was working with her, which was just, now that I think about all these years that have gone by, it's been like 16 years. That is unprecedented to start your career with a female owner of a mortgage company. Yeah. And I really feel like that kind of set me off on a trajectory that's just been a wonderful ride of one great female mentor after another to get me to where I am now, which is the COO of George Mason Mortgage.
That's so incredible. You're so lucky you had women in your life that could take you through the process. That's so awesome. Well, so let's just dive right into some of our questions. So the first thing we were wondering from you is, how can women producers be brave in the mortgage industry and ask for what they need?
Well, I thought this was such a critical question just because I recently read Rashima Sinjani's new New York Times bestselling book, Brave Not Perfect. And I do participate with the organization Girls Who Code, which is kind of her organization. And I just love that tagline because I think it really feeds into this whole idea of not being afraid to fail. I know for me personally, it took some time and coaching from other female mentors to say, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. When we hear things like soft skills and active listening, I mean, sometimes that's a misnomer for just be a doormat for people. And I think that the first step to really good, persuasive, brave asking, putting yourself out there is to understand where you are in that conversation with somebody else. So, not using no as a hard no, it's a soft yes. And I know men instinctively do this, but it's taken a lot of practice and a lot of encouragement from others to say, well, now wait a second, just because you heard no the first time, that's not the end of this conversation. And the more you practice that, I think that's where the bravery comes in, that you really understand this is not for me, the end of this conversation.
That's great advice.
Yeah, and I really like that. And I want to back up a little bit. Before you ever get to a no, and I might say when you ask, you rarely get no's. That's been my experience. Yeah. It's not being brave enough to ask. I have this great mentor. I was a realtor before I was a lender, and her name's Nancy Venuti, and I love her. And I would go show, it was in the days of buyer market, so you could go look at properties for days and days and days and days and never see the same one twice. And I had these one buyers that just ran me everywhere, and I was in my, I think I was 26 maybe at the time, maybe 25, and I showed them like 30 properties, right? And she's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, they like a lot of them, but they haven't picked one, right? And she's like, well, have you asked them if they want to write an offer? And I go, no, I didn't. Next day I go in and I'm like, they like the house, it's cute, it fits. I said, so you guys want to write an offer? And they said, yeah, we do. And I was floored. And it was a really revolutionary moment in sales for me, which was don't be afraid to ask, because the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no. Chances are they're going to say yes every time. So for women to even get to the point of asking is the threshold, I feel like. It's not the no's that are afraid. And have you experienced that yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I think even as recently as the last 6 months, some of the things that are going on with pandemic planning, trying to restructure some of our departments and teams, there's really opportunities right now to lead in, I think, a more empathetic direction that not just men, but whole organizations need to hear. And sometimes you got to be a little vulnerable to put yourself out there and not be afraid for them to go, I hadn't considered that. And let me give, for example, we were in a meeting where we were discussing, people's timeline capacity. We have all of these loans pouring in right now. And I think, you lose sight of the fact that so much of your workforce might actually be home with small children. I still have kids that are school age. This is a reality for so many of us. And so I think there was kind of a throwaway comment, very, very much a joke, not intended to be harmful about people got all this time on their hands. They're home and they're productive because they have nothing else to do. And I could just feel that moment of like, okay, I can rise to the occasion and be the voice for those that are kind of here on the fringe. That it's like, this is not the case for everyone. And what was very interesting is that when I did speak up and I did try to adjust and course correct, I had an outpouring of support from both men and women after I just made the recommendation that, we might need to think about this differently in leadership, about this work-life balance opportunity, and really see this as a way to lead culturally right now during this crisis, instead of maintaining status quo, that it's, as if none of us have children or pets or aging parents or all these other caretaking responsibilities.
Right. So true. I love it.
Yeah. I love that you had that recent opportunity to stand up and be like, actually, people who are at home are doing many things.
Yeah.
They're not just sitting around.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of what we've been really trying to tease out is, when people are starting their careers, a lot of people assume that you just know what you're doing and they throw you to the wolves kind of a thing. Right. So what do you wish you would have known in the beginning of your career that no one shared with you?
Well, I've thought about that question a bit since you posed it, or before we even got on here, and I thought, honestly, I'm such a type A that I wouldn't have heard it, even if somebody had said it to me. So if I'm being really honest, I'm not sure I would have really heard the message. But now looking back, if I could sit down with my past self, I genuinely feel like focusing on being respected for my work and not liked. In mortgage, and specifically because I came up in fintech, I came up on the technology side of the house, which is a very, I think, male-dominated in banking and mortgage. Well, let me tell you, IT is that and then some. So, when I'm sitting there in a group of, coworkers, managers, and you might be the only female voice in the room, being on advisory boards, only female in the room, I found that, capacity and competency did win every time, and that you garner that respect by simply being open and willing to learn, and also not afraid to back down. And so for me, again, if I could have heard it at the time, instead of smiling and saying yes and placating, just kind of standing in that power has really served me well over the last even 12 years.
That's really great. But does that come back to confidence for you? Was it easier? Did you feel, or was it a fake it till you make it? How did that work out for you?
Yeah, I think I was really fortunate, like I said, to grow up in a home of 4 sisters. There's 4 of us total. So I had 3 older sisters plus a really wonderful mentor. My 3rd grade teacher was like another older sister. She's actually a principal. And my mother is a school teacher. So I had all these really strong models of women who, in the words of Tom Petty, they don't back down. And I know that's not everyone's delightful childhood to have that kind of model, but I was really fortunate. And I did find that to inform these interactions that were shockingly adversarial, or maybe attempted to diminish or chink away at my sense of self. But it could not. I was already too grounded in who I was to allow that to shake me. So I don't really genuinely feel like I was faking it. I did feel like I was a bit off kilter sometimes, or not sure how to proceed. But that's where getting back after being focused on, what was that core competency, and leaving it back at the office, the subjective, the interactions, the social aspects. Maybe I wasn't invited to happy hour because I was the only woman there, but day after day, year after year, that's not what I was in there for. I was in there to be a change agent, to get it done. And so that, to me, really kind of what pushed me forward to success, was not worrying about it being a popularity contest.
I think for so many women in business and in tech in particular, it's a complication of wanting to be liked and wanting to do their job exceptionally well, right? And so I think I love what you're saying about capacity and competency wins every time, because I think it's such an important thing for women in your line of work and in tech in particular to remember, like, not everybody has to like you, but getting people to respect you is huge. And I think that's such an important piece for all of us to remember. I mean, I'm a coach, so I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, no, not everybody has to like you. You just have to keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. And those people who want you, they'll come in. Like, you'll get your clients, you'll get the people you want if you keep speaking your truth and speaking from your core. Do you feel like that's been an important part of your life? Like, you just really being clear on what it is you wanted to accomplish?
Yeah, I do like the Brene Brown quote. I don't know if she stole it from 12 Steps, but I still think it's a great quote about, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Like, I've heard that a lot lately. Yeah. I just had a coaching moment on my team, even this week. If they see this will be quite germane, but where I just said, hey, look, you're going to find my style to be direct, and I'm not worried about all the pejoratives or descriptive words you're going to use after we have this, because at the end of the day, you're going to find that I'm just being myself. Like, this is me authentically. And that has played out in both sales, IT, consulting, any of the different roles that I've played over my career. That really hasn't varied at all. And talking to some of our other large producers at the mortgage company who are $100 million producers, it's very interesting that seems to be, for women especially, such a huge part of being authentic and showing up and really being who you are unapologetically.
What words of advice do you have for a woman who's looking to change company?
Yeah, change is, it's what we're all kind of after, I think, at the end of the day, right? Every opportunity to be better. And I have looked for companies who were right on the cusp or needing to change. So this, to me, is kind of my sweet spot. Change management is something I'm very passionate about with project and agile. And I just published an article a while back, just via LinkedIn and out to some folks around, so often when we're looking down the path of change, we're trying to assimilate all these tasks for how to move people and move the pack the way we want them to go. But honestly, the conversations at the higher tiers are so often about the how. I think we don't give ourselves enough freedom to just say, why not? So when I'm sitting there at the table, I'm hearing, well, we've always done it this way, and it's always, we don't do that this way. It's got to be done. The first question I always ask people is, but why not? Like, well, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you do it different? Why wouldn't you be open to the opportunity to do it better? And so when banking and mortgage lending folks are primarily based in this kind of sales emotional modality, that's just how they operate. That's what makes them successful. You have to understand that, a call to action like why not is so much more part of their language than trying to give them a project plan and lay out all the reasons. And even if you show them data, quite honestly, that might not be enough to get change done. So I like the motto of incremental change is still change. Do not be discouraged by how swiftly or how, the volume of the change, the frequency and intensity. Look at, are you culturally starting to get some people on your side as change agents? And that, to me, has always been a good litmus test of we're starting to move in the right direction.
That's lovely. I love that. So when you're negotiating, what is your best tip for negotiating?
I think it comes back to kind of what we were saying about either confidence or a sense of core value. And let me be clear here. I am not talking about dollar amount, paycheck, salary value. That's certainly important in a lot of negotiations in your career. But even when it comes down to contract negotiation or things with employees that are under me about their positions, you want to get to that win-win, but so often just in terms of economics, when we are from a place of scarcity, we've already lost our power. So I really do try to take a minute when I'm looking at the objectives of what I'm about to negotiate and just kind of self-evaluate, am I coming from a place of scarcity or abundance? And so then when you know your own core value, my value to the team, my value to the community, my software application, my ROI, there's all kind of variables on that value schema. But that, I think, frees you to come into that from a place of, this is a conversation where either way, even if the answer is no, I'm still coming away whole. And I'm not trying to make myself whole by negotiating.
I think that's an important thing. I think a lot of loan officers, speaking of loan officers or any kind of salespeople, come from a place where they like, the grass is greener on the other side. And what you're basically saying is make the grass green where you're at and decide if you want to move into that other position, because you're just going to drag all that garbage with you anyway.
Yeah, I was talking to a really great branch manager we have. Again, we're very fortunate to have, and I'm only saying this because this is, I think, significant, $100 million producers, one individual loan officer, $100 million worth of volume. And this gentleman today, when we were talking about refi and pipeline, and he said, I have no problem saying no to people. I have no problem being able, in the middle of that contract, negotiation for realtors or borrowers to go, yeah, that's not going to work for me. And it doesn't leave you feeling scared. It leaves you feeling empowered to go, okay, that one didn't work, but there will be another that's going to make sense and that's going to work for me.
Love that. I love that.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. So do you have one empowering idea that you want to share with women?
Oh, I have a lot. I don't think we have enough time for that, ladies.
Talk about as many
by the way,
you want.
By the way, just love this format because I have been so affected by, Ellie Mae's women's group, Emerge, MBA, the Mortgage Bankers Association had a women's, leadership group. These types of forums are so meaningful, especially for those of us kind of coming up through the ranks in our careers. So yeah, if even in my little kernel of truth here, grain of wisdom for the just shy of 20 or so years, I lean into my hero, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG representing. I mean, I used to have a RBG. My favorite quote of hers, she has a lot, was when you look down the path of your life, sometimes the things you regard as your impediments turn out to be your greatest fortunes. And I have to tell you that, especially in technology and mortgage, and bank owned, I was on banking call today, bank committees. I mean, so this is across the whole financial industry. You have to look at obstacles as opportunities. That is the most empowering thing, to change your frame of mind, to go, I don't care if I have to dig under it, jump over it, go around you, change companies. I'm going to get there because this will not limit me. Basically, go at it and do not stop.
Can I draw on a personal experience? Maybe you can find one. When you encounter those moments in your life, because we all get worked up, we get angry, we cuss under our breath, we call our girlfriends, we're pissed off, we vent. So we all kind of go through that place when we encounter those times in our life. How do you rally to get to the point where you're going to push on? What do you say to yourself? What does that feel like?
Ooh, I think first it has to feel like, and I love the visual image of just this question. If you could go to your younger self, if you could go to that 5th grade version of yourself that got bullied, or that 7th grade version that didn't get the call back from the boy you liked, or whatever the disappointment was, right? If you could put some empathy around the current circumstance, just like you would from that mothering, mentoring, coaching perspective, all of a sudden it softens the harshness of what just came about. And let me give you, for example, without getting too detailed, there was an instance where something very hurtful was said, and it was specifically directed about me being a woman and getting an opportunity. And, I was angry and I cried about it. And it hurt. It really did hurt to have those words said. And as I was sitting there, I was journaling that night. I'm a big fan of journaling, by the way. I was journaling that night, and I had kind of that epiphany where it was like, okay, so if I don't have daughters, I only have sons, but if I had a daughter and she was sitting here and she was giving me the same thing in her career, what would I say to her? And so I took all that energy and I kind of poured it into reframing it from a place of kindness, to soften for myself, to go, nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves to hear those things. And somehow that, I think, provides the emotional reserve to stop getting caught up in this kind of victim mentality, or all of us can very easily go to a place of revenge where you want to lash back out. None of that has been productive. When I have let myself stay there in that dark place, it has not served me well. And so I do kind of take the tact of however you have to mentally visualize to get there for yourself, to come from a place of kindness, of softness, of understanding. Give to yourself what was not given to you in that moment, and you will find a wealth of power that's deep down there to be grounded in.
Oh my God, I love that so much. Like, I'm just like, you just made me take a big deep breath and go, yes.
Yeah.
You gotta feel that one. You gotta breathe through it for sure.
Yes, Andria. Oh, I love it. And, that actually takes me to a question I really want to ask you, which is, in all of these interviews we've been doing, and I'm sure in the future interviews, people have attributed their success to several things that they've done, coaching, having mentors. You mentioned earlier that you were really lucky to have the mentors that you have. For people who are either beginning or middle of their careers, what do you think is important when it comes to asking for, like, is coaching important? Is mentoring important? Like, how can women seek out opportunities for those sorts of things, do you think?
Yeah, I think first, if you are lucky enough to be in an organization that already has a path towards young mentoring and leadership, doesn't have to just necessarily be female empowerment, you are way ahead of the game. There are a lot of great companies now that are starting to see this as a necessity for some of their entry-level positions to help groom people. I was not that fortunate because in kind of your core, let's call it good old boy mortgage banking, they don't have those types of things. So I really had to seek out a lot of opportunity. And first it started with, as I mentioned, my boss and mentor, Kathy Zimpel. After that, my consulting career was because of another female executive who owned a consulting firm and came to me and said, I see potential and I see you. So I have to say I was very lucky that I didn't even have the foresight to know what to look for until somebody brought it to me. So I do not want to say I have all the answers there, but what happened from there is I recognized, I'm not getting these tools where I'm at in my organization. So I have to look outside. And so that became sometimes graduate school programs or certificate programs, and finding some allies in there, professors, people like that in the community. Some of my community involvement with either church, there's some leadership things that I've done to mentor girls below me, women that are older than I am. And then also I'd say all of these kind of industry empowerment groups, yourself included, watching things like podcasts, TED Talks. There's a lot of ways that you can go out and resource it without it being actually given to you. So I was very grateful that I had it kind of brought to me when I was in my 20s. But as soon as I kind of got a sense of when that wasn't there, I was missing something significantly in my career. So I would absolutely recommend coach, a mentor, a group, a leadership group, any of those that works for you and your personality style. You've got to reach out for a lifeline for sure.
So to even identify the tools that are missing, it's really about trusting your gut instinct and listening to that voice that says, hey, something's missing here. You should probably go pursue that, right?
Yeah, and it's nice to have, I like to, use the Mika Brzezinski phrase, like, you got to have a sponsor. So you got to have a sponsor in your own organization. That can be a man or a woman. Sure. But there is something very unique about having women in your life, voices of other women who are trying to lead towards success, because you have to, I think you guys said it best where you said you have to see it to really understand it. You have to see yourself there to really envision it for your life.
You don't know what you don't know sometimes. Right? And until it's shown to you, until you can see. And that's what I had talked about with Laura. I was so excited because I'm like, where are all these women coming from all of a sudden? I'm so excited to have these women. And I feel like a kid in a candy store. And I feel so fortunate that we have women like you that we can talk to and just ask those questions.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for what you do. This is super fun to get on together, and these are all my favorite topics. So if you ever need to reach out again, I'm your gal when it comes to leadership, IT, mortgage. Just keep it coming.
Maybe we'll do a little more specific next time.
Hang out a little bit, Andria. Hold on. Thank you for joining us.